A century ago, Evinrude turned a lakeside obsession into a household legend. Then, in a single day, it vanished. The world remembers the glory, but behind the fall was a gamble on radical technology, corporate chaos, and decisions that rocked families, workers, and an entire boating culture. How did American innovation become a cautionary tale? The truth behind Evinrude's downfall is more personal and more shocking than you've ever heard. Let's begin where the legend was born. Old Evinrude stood on the shore of Okauchee Lake in Wisconsin, watching his small rowboat drift. The story goes that he wanted to bring ice cream to his wife before it melted, but the slow trip across the water sparked a bigger idea. In 1909, he introduced the world's first commercial outboard motor, a compact gasoline-powered engine that could be clamped onto almost any boat. This wasn't just a machine, it was a promise to make life on the water easier and more accessible. From the start, Evinrude's approach was different. He believed that engines should be simple enough for anyone to use, yet powerful enough to trust far from shore. Early models used lightweight die-cast aluminum, an industry first that made them easier to lift and mount. In an era when most engines were heavy, temperamental, and dangerous to start, Evinrude's team engineered the first electric starter outboards, eliminating the need for risky hand cranking. By 1911, the company was producing hundreds of engines a year, each stamped with Old's name and a reputation for reliability. Simplicity was the promise. The innovations kept coming. Folding tillers, corrosion-resistant alloys, and two-cylinder designs set new standards. Mechanics and boaters alike began to see Evinrude as the engine that could be counted on, whether for a quiet day of fishing or a family adventure. The blue-cowled motors became fixtures on lakes across America, symbols of ingenuity and the freedom to explore. Through each improvement, Evinrude's legacy grew, not just as a brand, but as the heartbeat of a new American pastime. By the late 1960s, Evinrude was more than a name on an engine. It was a fixture of American summers, echoing across lakes from Minnesota to the Ozarks. Sales soared to $233.4 million in 1967, a number that reflected not just market dominance, but a way of life. Evinrude engines powered fishing boats, family runabouts, and water skiers, their blue and silver cowls as recognizable as baseball gloves or picnic coolers. Generations learned to tie their first knots and cast their first lines with an Evinrude humming at the stern. The sound of those two-stroke motors, sharp, confident, unmistakable, became the unofficial soundtrack of weekend escapes. Dealerships lined main streets in small towns, windows filled with banners promising adventure and freedom. Catalogs showed fathers teaching sons to steer, mothers sunbathing on deck, and friends laughing as they sped across glassy water. For many, owning an Evinrude was not just about horsepower or reliability. It was a ticket to a certain kind of American dream, a promise that the world was open and summer would last forever. Evinrude's reach stretched far beyond the United States. Engines shipped to Europe, Australia, and South America, carrying with them a piece of the American spirit. Mechanics took pride in the simplicity and strength of the designs, while families passed down motors from one generation to the next. The brand's identity was woven into family albums and campfire stories, an enduring symbol of ingenuity and togetherness. In these years, Evinrude stood at the crest of its cultural wave, trusted by millions and envied by rivals. By the mid-1990s, the future of two-stroke outboards hung on a single promise: a cleaner, more efficient engine that could outsmart tightening EPA rules. OMC's answer was the Ficht direct injection system, licensed from a German firm and rushed into production to meet looming emissions deadlines. On paper, Ficht was a marvel, using high-pressure injectors to deliver fuel straight into the combustion chamber, reducing wasted hydrocarbons and slashing emissions. Engineers in lab coats spoke of precise timing, cleaner burns, and fuel economy that would keep Evinrude ahead of the pack. But the physics of combustion and the realities of factory floors rarely align. The Ficht system demanded manufacturing tolerances tighter than anything OMC had ever attempted. Injectors had to open and close within milliseconds, seals needed to withstand new pressures, and every piston, rod, and bearing had to hold up under a harsher, hotter environment. Instead, production lines in distant plants, some in Mexico, struggled to keep up. Quality checks missed subtle flaws. Supplier substitutions crept in without updated specs. The result? Injectors that leaked, fuel rails that sometimes sprayed raw gasoline, and engines that could erupt in smoke or, in the worst cases, fire. Mechanics on shop floors started seeing the same patterns. Engines arrived with melted pistons, scored cylinder walls, or rods that had punched through the block. Some failures happened at idle, others at full throttle. Service bulletins from OMC tried to keep up, introducing mid-year patches, pinned cylinder heads, new software, reinforced bearings, but the defects kept multiplying. Field reports documented voltage drop-offs in injectors, pin migration from thermal expansion, and bearing ridges from rushed steel substitutions. Each fix came too late for the last round of engines off the line. Dealers, once loyal, watched warranty claims pile up. Some engines failed after only a few hours on the water. Owners faced breakdowns far from shore, while mechanics scrambled for answers with limited diagnostic tools. In the background, the EPA clock kept ticking. OMC's gamble on Ficht had turned from a technical leap into a mechanical crisis, and the damage was spreading from the test bench to the heart of the brand. December 1999 arrived with a sense of dread across Evinrude's dealer network. Phones rang off the hook as news of a massive recall spread. Thousands of Ficht-powered engines, already in the hands of customers, were flagged for urgent inspection. The official recall cited safety hazards, leaking injectors, fuel spray, and in some cases, engines catching fire. Service shops scrambled to track down serial numbers, but the scale was overwhelming. Mechanics faced a backlog of repairs they could not keep up with, and the parts supply chain buckled under the weight of urgent orders. Dealers who had spent decades selling Evinrude motors found themselves trapped. Showrooms filled with unsellable inventory. Warranty claims piled up, often for engines that had failed after just a handful of hours on the water. Some dealers tried to return their stock, only to be told the company could not accept it. Others watched customers walk out, furious and demanding refunds. Lawsuits landed on desks, dealers suing for compensation, owners for damages, investors for lost value. The sense of betrayal ran deep. For many family businesses, Evinrude was not just a product line, it was their identity and livelihood. On January 4, 2000, Outboard Marine Corporation filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The announcement sent shockwaves through the marine industry. Outboard Marine Corporation's debts totaled hundreds of millions, and thousands of creditors lined up in court. Dealers were left with engines they could not sell, parts they could not return, and bills they could not pay. Some closed their doors within weeks, unable to weather the storm. Investors saw shares plummet to pennies, erasing decades of accumulated value almost overnight. The collapse played out in public view. Newspapers ran headlines about the downfall of an American icon. Mechanics told stories of engines they could not fix, of customers they could not help. The recall and bankruptcy combined to create a vacuum. No one knew who would honor warranties, supply parts, or even answer the phone at corporate. For the first time in nearly a century, the future of Evinrude was not just uncertain, it was out of anyone's hands. In the chaos, a new player began circling the remains. Bombardier Recreational Products, a Canadian company with ambitions of its own. Engineers at Bombardier Recreational Products arrived in Sturtevant, Wisconsin, with a single goal: restore the trust that had defined Evinrude for generations. The scars from the Ficht disaster ran deep, but BRP's new team, led by Eric Menard and Michel Bergeron, saw a path forward through innovation, not retreat. Their answer was E-TEC, a direct injection, two-stroke engine that promised to do what its predecessor could not: deliver clean power without compromise. E-TEC's launch in 2004 drew attention from across the marine world. The engine came with a 3-year or 300-hour window with no dealer-scheduled maintenance, a pledge unheard of in the industry. Owners could run for seasons without a single oil change, spark plug swap, or scheduled tune-up. The technology behind this claim was a suite of refinements: advanced fuel mapping, self-cleaning injectors, and an onboard computer that constantly adjusted timing and lubrication for maximum efficiency. The result was an outboard that not only met, but exceeded EPA emission standards, running cleaner and quieter than many four-strokes. Recognition soon followed. E-TEC engines received the EPA Clean Air Excellence Award and multiple innovation honors from the National Marine Manufacturers Association. Boaters and mechanics who had once sworn off two-strokes found themselves giving Evinrude another look. Some called the E-TEC the most reliable outboard they had ever owned. Dealers, too, began to rebuild their confidence, stocking showroom floors with the new blue and white cowlings, hopeful that the worst was behind them. For a brief moment, it seemed as if Evinrude's story might be one of redemption after all. In 2014, Evinrude unveiled the E-TEC G2, a bold attempt to rewrite the rules of outboard performance. The G2 arrived with promises of higher torque, customizable panels, digital steering, and emissions numbers that outpaced most four-strokes. For a moment, the company's future seemed bright. But behind the showroom lights, old challenges refused to fade. Dealers faced a new kind of headache. The G2's advanced diagnostics and electronic controls demanded specialized training and tools. Smaller shops struggled to keep up, investing in equipment they could barely afford. Some mechanics, used to the simplicity of earlier models, found themselves lost in a maze of error codes and proprietary software. Frustration grew as warranty claims sometimes stalled for months, waiting on parts shipped from distant warehouses. Out on the water, the two-stroke stigma lingered. Despite E-TEC's clean credentials, many buyers still saw four strokes as the safer bet: quieter, more familiar, and backed by industry giants like Mercury and Yamaha. Dealers watched as boat builders increasingly bundled their hulls with four-stroke packages, leaving Evinrude's market share to shrink. The dealer network, once the backbone of the brand, thinned as shops dropped their franchises or closed altogether. Inside BRP, executives weighed the cost of continued investment against flat sales and rising regulatory pressure. The G2's technical success couldn't mask the reality. Evinrude was fighting on shrinking ground, hemmed in by changing tastes and a market that was moving on. The fragility beneath the surface had become impossible to ignore. On May 27, 2020, Bombardier Recreational Products released a statement that landed like a closing door. Effective immediately, all Evinrude outboard engine production would cease at the Sturtevant, Wisconsin facility. The official language was blunt. The outboard business had been greatly impacted by COVID-19, making it impossible to operate profitably. Within hours, the shutdown swept through the factory floor and across the globe, erasing more than 650 jobs, over 350 in Wisconsin, and the rest scattered through BRP's international network. BRP's CEO, Jose Boisjoli, addressed the decision directly, citing not just the pandemic but years of mounting challenges. He said the business segment had been facing challenges for the past couple of years, and with the impact of the current pandemic, it had become impossible for the company to continue to support it. The press release promised continued support for existing warranties and parts, but made clear that Evinrude's future had been decided in a single boardroom vote. The announcement also confirmed a new partnership. Mercury Marine would supply outboards for all BRP boat brands going forward. For dealers and workers, the news arrived by email and conference call, leaving little time to react. Orders in the pipeline were frozen. Inventory became unsellable overnight. The abruptness of the move stunned an industry that had weathered decades of change, but never a disappearance this sudden. In a single afternoon, a brand that had powered generations of memories was reduced to a footnote in a corporate strategy shift. Dealers woke up to find their inboxes filled with a single, devastating message. The email from BRP arrived without warning, spelling the end of Evinrude Outboards. For many, it was the first and only notice. No phone call, no heads up, just a cold digital alert that decades of partnership had vanished overnight. Showrooms that had once buzzed with anticipation turned silent. Inventory ordered for the summer rush became dead weight in an instant. Some dealers stood in empty shops, staring at rows of engines that now had no future. Others scrambled to cancel orders, field calls from angry customers, and plead with lenders for more time. Online, the shockwave hit just as hard. Boating forums exploded with disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. Posts from lifelong Evinrude owners mixed technical worries with raw emotion. Mechanics compared notes about parts availability and warranty support, while others wondered aloud if their livelihoods had just disappeared with the brand. Rumors swirled about the Mercury supply deal. Some saw it as a lifeline, others as a final insult. BRP's promise to honor existing warranties did little to calm the chaos. Dealers questioned whether support would hold or if they would be left to shoulder repairs and customer outrage alone. For families who had trusted Evinrude for generations, the loss felt personal. Stories poured in from boaters who had learned to fish behind those blue cowlings, who had rebuilt engines with their fathers, who had measured summer by the sound of an Evinrude at full throttle. Now, with a single email and a corporate pivot, that era was gone. The cost was not just financial. It was the sudden erasure of a legacy and the uncertainty of what, if anything, could fill the void. Today, Evinrude's disappearance is a warning. Even icons can vanish overnight when innovation collides with shifting regulations and corporate calculation. As global emissions laws tighten and legacy brands fade, the next wave of technology faces the same crossroads. The waters keep changing. What we cherish in our culture and in our engines depends on who's willing to adapt before the current shifts again.